on the comment section of this live stream if you are watching, and let us know. Let us know what you're feeling right now. If you're excited, let us know if you have any questions that you want us to ask Kait later on in the program. We are really excited to have you all here. We'll be beginning very shortly, but yeah, just let us know you're watching. If you're watching, let us know where you're watching from. I mean, in your homes, of course. But let us know if you're watching from Quezon City or from Pasig or from Visayas or from Mindanao or even from New York, from the US. We always love to have people come in from different parts of the world. We want to bring everyone together for this thing that we all love so much. So leave us a comment. We will be starting very shortly. Thank you all so much for being here tonight.
Did you see my party dress? This morning I was feeling dressy. Mother thinks I'll get it messy, but you cannot see where I have spilled. I spilled here and here and here and here. Oh no, that was on my other dress. John Michael stole my birthday cake and Jenna Walker tried to take my crunch and munch. It wasn't fair. I grabbed the punch, I climbed the chair, and then I fell and punch went everywhere. On the floor, on the chair, on his shoes, in her hair, but it wasn't on my party dress. John Michael once made fun of soccer, so I stuffed him in a locker. I play soccer and I play the flute. I do art and discovery camp and tumbling and t-ball, and I play piano every night. My dad says I'm a prodigy, but I think I would rather be the FBI or CIA, a secret spy who saves the day. And when I finish saving it, I'll play Ode to Joy, Inja Joe, Ferjaka, Allegro, the Paglingap candy, and also this song I wrote. La, 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 la. It has words, I'm a spy, and it's really fun. And I wear a cape and do you like my party dress? And I do pirouettes at Brussels. I buy all my clothes in Brussels. Dad says that's where Brussels sprouts are from. I've toured Brussels and Paris and Vienna. And this one time we pretended to go to Rome, but we went to Iceland. And in Iceland, my dad presided over an international corporate trade hearing. That was a secret. And we saw the Reykjavik Ballet. My dance class is on Saturday. Miss Laura and Miss Lisa say I'm much more bright than I appear. I suction right. It's very clear that I'll be in the Nutcracker next year as a mouse, then a soldier, then a candy cane, then a Marzipan, then a Russian and an angel, then a Polish Chanel. Let me dance to this song 'cause I wrote it so well. It goes. I roll dance until I play all the parts. It's a great ballet. Sing with me. I will do a turn and another turn.
Where?
Mother says I'll quit. I will never quit. I will do a split someday. And I guess that's it. Oh, and one day when I'm president, my time will be very late, so I have time to legislate the kind of laws I think are cool. I'll pass some laws to banish school, and then all of the countries that I rule will be peaceful and happy and comfortable and
All right, so we are ready to begin. Thank you to everybody who's here tonight. This is 16 Bars' Emerging Stories, an online playwriting seminar with Kait Kerrigan. So we're so glad to have everybody here right now at the stream. We apologize for the technical difficulties we encountered earlier. I know that we were all expecting to be streaming on Facebook Live tonight, but unfortunately, when one technology fails, we must utilize another. So we are now on YouTube Live. We are so happy to have everybody here. So a little housekeeping before we begin. We encourage our viewers tonight to leave comments in the comment section, especially if you have questions for Kait. So just so you know, the format of this seminar will be something like a Q&A. So we've gathered, before the program, we gathered questions from our various social media platforms. We asked you to send us questions on Instagram, on Facebook, and we are asking those questions tonight. But of course, we want to make sure that everybody's questions are heard as much as possible. So we will be collecting your questions from the YouTube live stream comment section, and we will be bringing them up later in the program. So before we begin, I actually want to introduce, for anyone who doesn't know, I want to introduce our beneficiary for tonight's program. Emerging Stories, an online playwriting seminar with Kait Kerrigan. We want to show our support for the UP Red Cross Youth's project, which is called Paglingap, a donation drive for hospitals. So actually, we have a special guest here on the stream tonight. We have Princess Alaray, who is the project head, and she's representing Paglingap tonight, and she's here to talk a little more about the program that they're doing and the great things that they're doing for the frontliners here in the Philippines. So, Princess, let's go to you. Ooh, there we go. Oh, we can't hear you, Princess. I think you're muted. There you go.
Hello? Hello?
Yep.
Yeah, okay. Oh, so hi everyone. First of all, I just want to thank 16 Bars and Kait as well for having Paglingap as their beneficiary for tonight's event. So, for just a short briefer on how Paglingap started and how any other person can help with or to anyone else, right now, I just want to say that because of the situation where we're in, we are confronted with a scenario which we might have just read from books. Everyone's suffering in their own way. So the least that we can do actually for anyone else is to be kind. And as Mother Teresa once said before, it's in one of her poems, let's be kind anyway. So meaning, let's be kind regardless of how other people seemingly treats us, because right now we don't know where they're coming from, each of us, where anyone else is coming from, because precisely we don't know the suffering that they're in. So that's the first thing that we should remind ourselves, which is to be kind to other people. Then when you start to be kind, when you start being kind, you can ask yourself, how can I show the other person next to me that I care? Maybe we can start by asking them how they are or how they've been doing. Then let's take that step further and ask ourselves, how can we actualize the help? How can we actualize the care that we want others to feel that will be emanating from us? So for one of the great helps would be coming from artists like Kait and this group, 16 Bars, which is to put up events like this, which is a great help to uplift spirits and somehow let others feel comforted wherever they are, whether they're just listening in their homes or um, passing their time. Then this 2 hour, 1 hour event of gaining knowledge or um, specializing in a craft might help the people. Now, Paglingap specifically is currently helping getting supplies from point A to point B. Meaning, we're actually just a set of old friends. We're alumni of UP Red Cross Youth. And together with the members, we've crafted this. This is a workflow actually, not really a project, but a workflow. We started by asking ourselves, how can we get the things that are needed from point A to point B? And we're just making things flow right now. And if you want help in that endeavor, because I'm sure a lot of people are looking for ways where they can help, this is one of the avenues where you can help. You can send your donations to 16 bars, or you can contact us directly. You can visit our page. The beneficiaries of Paglingap are posted in the UP Red Cross Youth page. We're adopting currently 5 hospitals a week so that we can focus and be precise on what we do. So if you wanna actualize the help, as I've mentioned earlier, you can start by letting us Paglingap help other people. And you can also show your support by letting 16 bars continue what they do and helping them stream more events so they can help you uplift your spirits. That's all. Thank you. Mabuhay, padayon tayong lahat.
Yay!
Yay, thank you so much, Princess, for that. So again, for anyone that's just coming in right now, our event tonight, Emerging Stories, an online playwriting seminar, is we support the UP Red Cross Youth's Paglingap, which is a donation drive for hospitals. We strongly encourage everyone to show support for our healthcare workers on the front lines by sending their donations. So of course, we will 16 bars will be pooling donations collected today. So if you send a donation to one of the accounts that we've listed as somewhere you can donate, if you were able to send, we will be sending those details in the comment sections section periodically, so that everybody will be able to see those details. But if you do send a donation tonight, in the interest of transparency, we want to be able to pool all of the money we receive tonight properly. So please send us a proof of donation via direct message to the 16 Bars Facebook page, so we can make sure we account for your donation. So thank you so much, Princess. Thank you for the work that you and the UP Red Cross Youth are doing for our healthcare frontline workers. All right, so now we move on to the program proper. Joining us today is a special guest all the way from New York, who we at 16 Bars have been dreaming of working with since 16 Bars was founded. I personally, as a writer, am so thrilled that she is here tonight. I am bursting at the seams with excitement because she's here, she's joining us. It's real, guys. So she is one half of the musical theater creator duo Kerrigan-Lowdermilk. As part of this dynamic duo who we love, she has worked on beloved shows such as The Mad Ones, formerly known as The Unauthorized Autobiography of Samantha Brown, Henry and Mudge, The Bad Years, Republic, and with playwright Lauren Gunderson, Rosie Revere, Engineer, and Friends. In her own right, she is a multi-awarded playwright, librettist, and lyricist, garnering honors such as the 2009 Claiborne Award and the 2016 Emerging Artist Award for Lyrics from the Theater Hall of Fame. So 16 Bars has had the fortune of working with her songwriting partner, Mix Brian Loudermilk, back in 2018. And now we are so excited that she is also joining us. friends of 16 Bars, please welcome our special guest for Emerging Stories, Kait Kerrigan.
Yes!
There we go.
Hi.
Hello, Kait. How
Hi.
are you doing?
Hi. It's so good to. I'm okay. I'm trying to make it so that I can see more than one person, and not see myself. I'm good. I'm good. I really loved. I was listening to what Princess said, and I was thinking about how much that applies. All of the things that she was talking about with empathy, basically, that like you're trying to see what it is to be in someone else's shoes, and that was making me think of what we're going to do today and talking about what playwriting is at its most essential and writing is at its most essential. And I thought that was a really amazing segue to that.
Awesome. How have you been considering everything that's going on in the world at the moment, especially in the United States and New York in particular?
Yeah, we've turned into a bit of a ground zero. I'm actually fine. Everything's fine where I am. I can't complain at all. I have a 2-family home with my mother-in-law and father-in-law. So they live downstairs in an apartment and we live upstairs. So we're a little less isolated. I do have a 4-year-old. So it's definitely been a challenge. She really misses her friends and like doesn't understand. She calls it the big, bad, horrible bug. And she doesn't understand why it's like taken over our lives. And she really wants to see other relatives and go places, and we can't. And it's hard. And, you know, everybody's got a little bit of cabin fever, but I mean, truly, like compared to the things that people are experiencing, we're absolutely fine. But we're also a little bit outside of the city. So we're in New Jersey. We're about 25 minutes from the city, but it's a very different vibe as a result of that. Like we're got a little bit of space, and we're not dealing with like being in an apartment with, I just keep thinking of people who live like in where I lived in Manhattan, where I lived in Brooklyn, like just having to like deal with laundry and things seems really, really difficult and complicated. Given how stressed everyone is and given how on top of each other everyone is in New York. So it makes sense to me that it's a place that has really gotten hit badly. And a lot of people I know have had it, but most people have been, you know, gone through it on their own and haven't had to go to a hospital, which is good. But yeah, it's a weird moment for our city, and it's a really weird moment for theater, and it's really hard to know what the next steps are, and a lot of people are very nervous about it.
That's really true. Like even here, actually right before the quarantine started here in Metro Manila, there were several shows that were about to open, and all of that was halted. Like literally, I think it's a production. It was a production of The Band's Visit. They literally already did their press preview like the night or 2 nights before quarantine was declared, and then everything got shut down.
Yeah.
So it's insane what's happening right now in the world.
You know, we were about to hit the high season in theater in New York. Like the lead up to Tony's, April and May tends to be a really big time for theater. And somebody, Stephanie J. Block posted the other day, and she was talking about basically like, you know, being nominated for a Tony Award last year, and that moment that she got to have, and then the entire month leading up to the Tony Awards is a huge, very busy season for theater in New York City. And it's really wild that that's all shut down to such an enormous extent. And also really, it's the thing that's really confusing is just how long events will be shut down, and how long it will be before, like just the unknown of how long it will be before people can gather as a group of more than, I don't know, 100. And so there's a lot of conversations that are happening about what theater is going to look like, and what what kinds of spaces we'll be using and how that will ripple out. And I mean, the truth is that it seems like from what I've read and what I've heard, no one actually knows where we're headed, because this is pretty unprecedented. But everybody's trying to figure it out. And I have hope that the ways everybody's pivoted to digital media will not completely go away, and that we will be able to connect more with people who are on the other side of the earth and have there be more content available for people who are not living in New York City. I feel like we've been focused on New York for a very long time in theater, and I think that we could broaden that focus a little bit.
All right. I mean, like, it's so it's really a lot. It's heavy to talk
It's a
about.
lot.
So let's kind of pivot a little bit to the subject of tonight's broadcast, which is playwriting. And I want to start with I think it's a pretty big question here. How did you, or at what point did you decide to become a playwright? Was there a specific play, something you wrote, saw, or read that helped you make the choice to become a playwright?
I kind of fell into it a little backwards. I had been writing fiction since I was a kid. I'd been doing theater since I was a kid. And I had been playing the violin since I was a kid. And all of those things were like 3 parts of my identity, but they were not, I didn't think of them as being connected in any way. And when I was in college, I had a really great, I was in college, and I was supposed to direct a show. We lost the rights. A friend of mine who was in theater school, because I was getting an English degree. A friend of mine who was in theater school suggested that I write a play with a bunch of actors, and basically suggested, without using the word devise, suggested I devise a show. And I thought that was crazy, but at the same time, like, got excited and had an idea. And so I put together a group of women and made a piece of theater with them. So that was the first experience I had kind of writing something, and I loved it, and I had a really great time. And I think there's like an alternate path where that led me toward, I think if I had someone around me who knew the word devised, I think that could have led me towards devising pieces, because what I loved about it was that collaboration and like weaving. And then but it didn't, and I didn't know that word, and I didn't have a mentor in theater. I had mentors in writing classes. And so that summer I started writing a play on my own. And then that fall I went back to school, and my professor, I was in some, like, I don't know, like a very elite fiction class. He only took like 6 people. And I sat down in my fiction class and I gave him the play that I'd written over the summer, like at his office hours. And he read it, and then he was like, come see me in my office. And I went, and he literally said, what the fuck are you doing in my fiction writing class? And I was like, oh my God, what are you talking about? You let me in your fiction writing class. And he was like, well, you're okay at fiction. You're fine. He's like, but you're good at this. He's like, you could do this. And that, it was such a weird backhanded compliment, but it really, really shifted something in me. Like someone turning to me, and no one had ever said to me, you can be a writer, and like no one had given me that permission. And there was something about the fact that he was also critical of what I was doing, and like, but at the same time said, well, you could do that you're good at this. And that was my first one. And so there was something about that shift that I think it sort of changed my makeup a little bit. Like I really started to focus on it. And he was actually a great mentor. And he's a fiction writer and a playwright, and has done a lot of screenwriting. And he was really good at helping me understand what things I'd learned from fiction writing. And he also like raked me over the coals that semester for my fiction writing. And he was right. And I really like dialogue. I actually don't like describing things very much. So I learned a lot that semester, and at the same time, like right at the same moment, Brian moved to New York City, who's one of my longtime collaborators, and Brian moved to New York, and we started working together on a musical. And again, it was like we just started trying it, and so those two things sort of moved in tandem for ever since. I've always been working on a play, and I've always been writing musicals primarily, because you can actually make a little bit of a living with musicals, and plays are even harder to make a living with than musicals are. So that's how I started. It was a little backwards. But the final discovery was when I started writing lyrics. And I realized that all the poetry classes I'd taken and all the violin lessons I'd taken actually led to me having an aptitude for that, and an understanding of that was sort of surprising and clear. There were certain things that I knew that as soon as I started applying it to lyric writing, it led me places that were really exciting to me.
That's the thing I think about this craft of theater. It's like you jump into it thinking you'll do one thing, and then you end up pivoting to another thing, and then another thing, and then you just end up touching all of these stones, and then everything's turned, and then it's a brilliant feeling that I think a lot of people really do try to capture in their careers as theater people. So I mean, let's get into something a little fundamental, which is the setup of a writer. Like, how would you get in the zone for writing in terms of the physical space that you're in, as well as the mindset that you're in going into like a writing session, whether it's a long writing session or a short one?
I mean, I have a 4-year-old, so I don't believe you need very much to get your job done. I feel like there's a lot of like, people have a lot of opinions about whether or not there's such a thing as writer's block, and like there's a lot of mysticism around the way people think you have to write. But I think the most important thing to do is you sit down at a table with a paper and a pen, or you sit down at a computer and you turn off all your social media and you actually just write. And it's not always fun, and it's not always productive, and you have to let go of that, the idea that you're always going to get something, you're going to get a product. You have to accept that sometimes you're just going to write about your feelings that you're having that day, because you need to get them out. Or other times you have a deadline and you have to get something done, and you just get it done. And I think the biggest thing, the two things that distinguish someone who is a writer and someone who's not is, A, do you finish things? Do you get to the end of your drafts? And do you force yourself to get to the end of the draft? Because there's nothing that's forcing you to get to the end of the draft except for you. And then the other, especially when you first start. And then the other thing that I think distinguishes a writer is that you're willing to fall on your face and be bad. And I think you have to write the bad version of something before you can write the good version, a lot of times. Not always. Every now and then you might get shot with inspiration, and you might get something exactly right, and it might be beautiful on your first pass. But I would say that happens one time out of 100. So like, you have to write the bad version. And especially I think in theater, and especially if you're writing a musical, because your job is not to get something perfect. Your job is to get anybody else on board so that they understand what you're talking about, so that you can keep making the thing, because you can't make it alone. And so you have to be able to get other people to understand the thing you're saying. And so writing sloppy and rough and loose, but getting to the end of something allows you then to go back and do it again and make it better and cleaner and smarter and more rich. But you have to do those first things. So I don't think there's any magic to it. I think there's a crazy amount of craft. I think there is like a slight aptitude. Like I think that there are some people who have a way with words or have a way with music. But I think that then on top of that, there's maybe training, but mostly a lot of man hours. It's that like, there is that, I forget what book it was, but there was a book that was really big about, 5 years ago that talked about like putting in your 10,000 hours. And I think that that's a huge thing in writing because there's nothing that substitutes for it.
Yeah. The process isn't always going to be lightning in a bottle. I mean, like, I think
it's almost never going to be lightning in a bottle.
Yeah. Some people work under the impression that, I mean, if you're a prolific writer, that words just magically pop up on your screen when you start typing. And I think, I mean, would you say from your experience that you still have days when you have a hard time pounding out the words that you want to write on the page?
Yeah, you have good days and you have bad days, and you have days where you get a ton done, and you have days where you get like a page of what you need to get done. And I think that the other thing that I make sure I have deadlines in front of me, and that keeps me from ever being precious. Because you have to get your job done and you only have so many hours. And I think that's also once I had a kid, that changed too, because you just have less time to be precious. And so when you have time to work, you work and you get a lot done very quickly. And it might not be good that day, but you do the thing that you said you were going to do. You do the draft of the lyric or you get through that scene. Or you just journal. Like if that's, if you're in the beginning stages of something, you might not know exactly where you're headed. And you might just need to write for a little bit. And I always think that my like back pocket thing, if I'm having a really hard time writing, is that I turn my computer off and I turn my phone off and I write with just a pen in a notebook. And I don't let myself stop for a little while, because like we have so much, we are trained to multitask so much. And I don't mind multitasking and I do it all the time. But there are times when if I'm struggling, if I'm not concentrating, that's the thing that I turn to the most as a reset.
So I think you touched on something that I think lots of writers have conflict on, which is writing on a computer versus writing on pen and paper. Where do you personally stand on the effectiveness of either as a writing tool?
I think when you're writing a first draft, I mean, listen, I write on my computer 90% of the time, because it's efficient. It gets the job done. I can find my drafts later. I'm less likely to have to, I'm not going to have to type up what I wrote. But if I'm like in the beginning of a new play, or I'm struggling to find a character, or I'm struggling to figure out how a certain scene might work, or I'm not focusing, I go back to pen and paper. And the reason I do that is because I think that when we're on our computers, I think our inner editor is on. And I think we tend to second guess ourselves a lot. And the reason I think we do that is because it's easy to do. Like you can delete an entire page with a command shift delete. Like you can just get rid of everything you just did. Whereas on paper, you actually can't do that. And so there's something about it that is more permanent. It's very suited to first drafts, because even if you cross something out, it's still there. Even if you cross the entire page out, it's still there. And so you're still moving through thoughts. And so I think that there's something about that experience of writing it out that leads you to places that might surprise you. And so I use it a lot I use it more for plays. I use it more for, I use it more if I don't know exactly where I'm going, or I know where I want to land, but I don't know how I'm going to get there. Whereas a lot of times I have such a strong plan for what I have to get done, because a lot of times in a musical, I've explained my entire idea to at least one other person, maybe 2 or 3 other people. If I'm doing that with lyric writing, I tend to do that on the computer. But if I get stuck, I always go back to paper. And I also have a lot of documents. I tend to not delete in documents, in things that I'm writing for lyric writing too, like, cause I'll write like an entire, if I'm coming up with a new song, and I know what the song's supposed to be about, but we don't have a hook yet. I'll write an entire page of hooks that we will pick 1 or 2 of that are kind of interesting. And then I'll write a bunch of lyrics for that are just brainstorm lyrics, just ideas. And I won't delete them. I won't fix them. I won't make them better. I'll just write a bunch of ideas. And then hopefully one of those will circle on and be like, okay, that's the one to go a little further with. And then from there, I start doing things that are a little bit more nitpicky. And that's when I start to edit a little bit.
All
But
right.
I think editing really can get in your way when you're trying to write. It's 2 different processes.
Yeah, definitely. Like everybody's inner self editor comes out when they start writing. I know personally, like I have a really hard time writing, especially on my computer, without deleting and deleting and deleting. It's just I think I would say it's a pretty bad habit to keep deleting myself sometimes.
Yeah, I think that judging, you can't judge your own writing while you're writing it. You actually can't. I mean, you can do it, but it's counterproductive. It's not useful. The process of writing, and this is actually something that my mom taught me as a little kid. Like I have a really intense inner editor, and I always have, and I've always been very self-judgmental and just judgmental in general. And so my mom used to brainstorm with me, and she was really harsh about the idea that there were no bad ideas and that I wasn't allowed to edit while we were brainstorming. And and I think that really stuck with me in a way that I didn't necessarily realize I was internalizing it that much. But I do think that as much as I have that, I try really hard to turn it off. And I don't always succeed, but that's the goal.
All right. So I think I want to circle a little back to setup. Like, especially when you're writing plays, do you find yourself using, when you're writing on your computer, when you're writing a play on your computer, do you find yourself using particular script writing software like Final Draft for writing? Especially, like, is that something that you do, or do you prefer to write on a plain text editor or Microsoft Word before setting it into a certain format?
I like formatting. I tend to format as I go, and there's something about the order of it that I find kind of soothing. I use Final Draft when I'm writing plays and screenplays. Anything I'm doing by myself, I tend to use Final Draft because the formatting is really nice and it's really clean. And it's very easy to use. But I've stopped using any kind of playwriting software for collaborations because Google Docs is so much better for collaborations, and like they keep getting better and better and better. So every script that I've worked on with any other writer in the past 3 years, we've started it in Google Docs, and that's where our shows live these days. Because especially when you have 2 different people working on the text, if you're the lyricist and there's a book writer, or you're the book writer and there's a lyricist, being able to go back and forth and have both of you in the same document in a live way is so much more important and so much more helpful. And the ability to like comment on things and like make notes. It's just a really robust collaborative program. And so I've moved basically all my collaborations over there. And I do I'm still a formatting nerd, and so is Brian. So the two of us both like find it very soothing to format something. So
I have
we'll
to
both
agree.
like go in and fix things. And I tend to do it and as I'm doing it, but Brian will occasionally just like go in and like format a whole section of something like they're feeling a little anxiety.
Yeah, I think like
known to happen.
There's a psychological effect seeing your words on the page in a certain format looking like a professional play.
It looks very real. Yeah,
it changes your psyche when you're writing. So I think
that's right. I'm also like I'm a numbers nerd about writing. Like I like to know how long something is. And so when something's not formatted, like I have some students who I do like an online playwriting seminar thing, and I've had a couple students who are not interested in formatting very much, and I end up being a total school marm about it because I want to understand how long their scene is, and I'm having a hard time and if I look at a scene that's in regular playwriting format, I can sort of gauge the pace of it, but when it's like all in a jumble, I'm like, I don't know if you have an hour-long play or a 2-hour-long play right now, and it stresses me out. So I really like having a sense of how much time has passed.
Awesome. I think those are things that our writers in the audience should keep in mind. So I think we're beginning to go deeper into the writing process right now. So I wanna go into this next part by asking, how did you work towards finding your voice as a writer? Like, was there a specific moment when you knew what your voice was?
What an interesting question. I don't know. I mean, I think that's something that develops over time, right? Like you become more and more comfortable in your own skin as a human being. And I think that as you do that, if your job is being a writer, I think you become more and more comfortable in your own skin as a writer. I also think I'm pretty proud of my ability to mimic other people's voice too, and like play in other people's space. I think one of the things about being a playwright or a musical theater writer, playwright, anything like that, I think there's something about that is a little bit of a mimic and a little bit of a hope. Like I hope to be a little bit of a chameleon. I think I have a couple voices. I don't think I have one. And I think it's more connected to what kind of story I'm telling. But that said, I definitely know that I have certain interests. I have certain things that are always true about what I want to do. And those include, I'm always interested in trying to say something very specific that I haven't heard said before. And that can be in the form of a play. Like I have a play where basically the entire idea of the play was that after I got married to my husband, I came to realize, through the process of marrying him, I came to realize that like my relationship with my dad could be changed by my relationship with my husband, which was like, it sounds small, but at the same time, I'd literally never thought of that. It never occurred to me that your child relationships could be transformed by your relationship with your adult relationships. And as I started writing this play, once I finished and I shared it with a couple of people, they were like, yes, I've never heard someone talk about that. And I was like, oh, cool. All right. Yeah, that is interesting. That is it's a different take on something. And so that idea of trying to always find a little corner of something that hasn't been said out loud or in that way. And trying to find the theatrical way to say it is something that I'm always searching for. And that can also be like, we have a song called Anyway, where like, it was a very specific itch I wanted to scratch in writing that song. I wanted to write something that was about grief, but that was not about sadness. I wanted to write about anger, and I wanted to see how far I was allowed to go. And I wanted to talk about what it feels like to just try to get through that feeling. And I think that specificity, the idea of getting through these small ideas in ways that feel really epic, or getting through big ideas that feel surprisingly small, is something that I think sort of goes back and forth in all the things that I've written. So I don't know if, I think it can be hard to ask yourself to find your own voice. People will start finding resonances in what you do, or they won't. I think you just have to keep chasing the things that are interesting to you. And I think you're working to, there's a great quote from Ira Glass about taste. And I think you have a certain kind of taste, and you're trying to measure up to it. You're trying to get to the place where your abilities match your taste. And I think that for me, that when I read that quote, that really resonated, and that felt really accurate to me. And it felt also less precious, and less like I had to work at something that was about me, but more about like trying to continue to grow as someone who wants things to be a certain way and who admires certain things. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. Also, shout out to everybody in the audience and here in our staff who love the song Anyway. So feel free to freak out when you mentioned
My
it.
favorite song.
We love that song
It's
a
a dark
lot.
one. It's a dark one.
So I think you touched on this a little bit in what you just spoke about with the play you wrote and with Anyway. So at what point in the process of writing a play or a song even, do you get to crack the themes of the story you're telling? Do you seek these themes out before writing, while writing, or when you're already editing what you're doing?
It does depend a little bit. I think that if you know where you're trying to go, this is going to sound really, it's a very simple idea, but if you know where you're trying to go, it's easier to get there. And so I think that trying to have an idea for what you want an ending to be, like with Anyway, I didn't know a lot about that character. I didn't know a lot about that song, but I knew how the hook functioned. And I knew that I was getting from this like throwaway to someone saying, if there was any way. That's literally what I started from. And I actually had that for years. I came up with that years and years and years ago. It was this like weird little song that I wrote on my own and showed to Brian. Was like, hey, I kind of played around with some music, and I had the ba 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 anyway. That's all I had. And that was the only thing that was like worth anything musically in what I had done. The rest of it was very rambling. And the two of us both remembered it. We both loved it. And we were like, all right, we have to do something to that someday. And then we were talking about this other idea, and we realized that this was the moment where we could possibly use that hook. And actually, I think that's something that happens to me a lot, is that I will have one idea that's over here that's just been sort of sitting for a while. And I'm like, oh, someday I'll do something with this idea. And then I'll have another idea that's over here. And I'll be like, okay, I want to do something with this. And somehow the two things come together. And once they come together, it becomes an actual idea with a little bit of a plan. So I think that there's something, for me at least, that joining of two different pieces tends to make something feel more solid. And then once I have those two pieces, I'm going to talk about grief, and I'm going to use this turn of phrase. Then I started writing, for that one at least, I started writing monologue. And that song really stressed me out when we were trying to write it, because Brian refused to structure it in advance, and just kept having me keep going. And I kept wanting to understand how big it was and how long it was. And I didn't think it was going to be as long a song as it was. But Brian was really determined to like sort of get me through it, have me sort of push the narrative forward without having too much structural, like making it into something that's really clean. Because I can sometimes try to make things a little too clean. So that was a long process of me just like writing more and more lyrics and trying to get to the place where it all scanned with itself. And then once we got that into place, we kept having to we had to add a couple extra bits to it to make it into something that actually felt like a song that has the integrity it now has. It's a weird beast of a thing. And we pulled from really weird places as we were pulling like references. We were like, oh, it could be, this section is a little like, all kinds of, there were all these different kinds of references. Some are musical theater, a lot of them were pop references, as we were trying to figure out how we could make it into something that felt complete and not rambly, because it's a weird one. But generally speaking, I have some kind of formal idea for what I want to do, and I have some kind of emotional thing I want to achieve, actually. Even the two-person play I was just talking about, it's a play called Father-Daughter. Like, I knew I wanted to do a play with two actors, and I wanted to find as many ways to transmute those two actors into different kinds of scenarios. And then I also knew I wanted to talk about this emotional idea.
Well, thank God Brian pushed you to really complete anyway, because I mean, every time somebody among us brings it up, like we always look at it as this beautiful, like complete story that's so powerful and resonant. And I don't think any of us could ever get through that song without tearing up at the very least. I even teared up like when I was reading like the essay you wrote. So for anyone in the audience that doesn't know, Kait has a Tumblr, and on it she's written quite a few essays about some of the songs that she and Brian have written, and they're wonderful pieces. Like, they're wonderful like companion pieces for the actual songs. Like, I remember looking at that essay for Anyway before I brought the song to the song interpretation class that we did with Brian in 2018. And it was just such a massive help to find the cadence of it by discovering like a little more about the context in which you created the song, the way you crafted the song. So I think, for anyone out there that wants to do a little additional study about the work of the works of Kait and Brian, I think those are really helpful, like supplemental tools for actors, for writers that want to dig into the work a little more. I think it's really they're really worth taking a look at. So before we go on, I for anyone that's just joining the stream now or just joined the stream a little late, like I just want to remind everyone that number one, that the floor is still open for questions. So here on YouTube Live, we are open to answering your questions. And number two, our beneficiary for this event is the UP Red Cross Youth's Paglingap, a donation drive for hospitals. So I think we've been posting the details to where you can send your money, the accounts on PayPal, on BDO, BPI. There are various places where you can send you can send your donations. We will be pooling them. If you send a donation, please make sure to just send us proof of the donation that you made. So moving back to the program, I think we actually have quite a few audience questions here. We're really excited because these are all such interesting questions. So I do hope we'll be able to tackle as many of them as possible. So we have one here that asks Kate, what was your process in writing the Bad Years? So did you write the songs first, or did you come up with a storyline first? Did you come up with the lyrics first? So I think a lot of our followers are very familiar with the work that you and Brian did for the Bad Years. So I think a lot of people are curious, like how those songs came into fruition, I think.
Well, the Bad Years is such a weird beast. We started out writing a song cycle, and about 20 of the songs are from that song cycle. And some of them are no longer part of the show, a few of them, but most of them are still in the show. But the show, about 5 years ago, we started talking with some producers about making an immersive piece and using the Bad Years as the foundation for it. And at that point, we reworked a plot, and it's grown since then. But there's 75 songs in the Bad Years, or at the minimum there would be maybe 60. But that's because it's immersive, and it's a house, and there are somewhere between 3 and 5 songs happening at any given moment, and you're walking through and you're making the choice about where you want to be and who you want to follow. And some of those songs we have a couple songs that we've written that now like live on top of other songs, and they're in the next room, and so it's on the same groove. And I wrote a new rhythm, and then Brian wrote a new melody that's a counter melody for a different song. So like some of them stand alone, and they all stand alone too. They could stand alone. So there's actually like there's the songs that people know from the Bad Years, and then there's a whole lot of other songs that we've never shared from the Bad Years, that have evolved in this most recent process. We were really close to doing a production, and then we had complications, which I'm now so grateful for, because it meant that we're still like able to do a production at some point when all of 2020 moves along, and we figure out how to do theater again. But I think that it's a hard thing to talk about without like really diving deep on it, because each song there are a couple songs that are foundational, and that are the songs we've sort of built the story out of, because at first it was songs about us and our friends, and then from there we have a lot of songs that are really, really connected to this story and this plot and this house, and the like history of this family.
Honestly, I wish I could have seen the immersive staging. Like I've seen reviews, I've seen pictures, and I just wish I was there, because like that sounds like such.
You never know. Who knows? I do not know what country it will happen in next.
Ooh, at Philippine producers,
honestly, could be anywhere.
Yes, get it.
Ooh, we have another audience submission here. I think this is a pretty specific question, I think. But how much stage direction should a writer put into a script?
I think a lot of directors will cross out a lot of your stage directions. I think I try to make sure that what I'm writing is essential. There's two kinds of stage directions, really. There's like some that are like, this is necessary information. And then there's also like color. And I think that sometimes some color is useful for people reading it who are not directors. That provides a little bit of atmosphere. And I do think that I think that the tone of your stage directions matters. And like, you are painting a picture, you are trying to like make sure the audience is reading your tone of your whole piece. And you only have so many tools to do that, because you don't have actors, you don't have, they're reading instead of experiencing. So I think that trying to like put a little tone into your stage directions and give them a little bit of your humor, a little bit of who you are as a writer and like what that piece is, can help. But I think a little goes a long way. People have a tendency to skip over large blocks of stage directions. So I try not to do that. Even if I have a decent amount to say in a stage direction, I break it up a little bit, so that it's a little bit clearer for someone to read it, and sort of forces the eye to process it a little bit more. But I think a little goes a long way.
All right. I think we have time for 2 more questions. We just have 2 more questions here for you. This first question is, I mean, it's a little more general, but what plays did you see or read that you would say changed your life, whether on a personal level or perhaps your life as an artist, or the way you go about your art?
Gosh.
It's a pretty loaded question.
It's a lot. Yeah, that's actually a lot. The first show that I ever saw on Broadway was Cats, for better or worse. I also saw Into the Woods around the same time, like in a touring production, and that was really exciting. I did a lot of theater growing up. I was in a production of Carousel when I was 3 with my mom, and that actually I think that actually kind of changed my DNA a little bit. I was really serious about being quiet backstage, and I got really mad when people tried to like play pranks on each other. It was community theater, so people were like fooling around backstage. It's what people do. But as a kid, I was very, very upset by that. And I was really focused on the story and really focused on what was happening on stage. So I feel like there is something about me that always had that. Things that I've seen that like, Sleep No More, actually, like Sleep No More had an enormous impact on me. It was one of those moments where I went into this, I was told, a friend of mine had told me about it a little bit. They gave me like 3 pieces of advice going in to see the show. And if you don't know what Sleep No More is, it's an immersive theater piece that takes place on, like, in New York, there's like 5 floors. And you just walk around and there's theater happening, and you're trying to understand what this story is, and you feel like you're walking through a dream. And that experience, that theater could be 3-dimensional like that, had never occurred to me. And I found it so thrilling, and it actually changed the way I wanted to make things. I feel like The Real Thing, I feel like there was some, Arcadia, The Real Thing, Tom Stoppard had a really big impact on me in college. I think Annie Baker is extraordinary. Some of her plays have really caught me by surprise. Sarah Rule is really wonderful.
Yes.
Eurydice really blew me away. And it felt different than anything I'd seen before. And it felt like it had different rules. And I was really excited about the fact that it was operating on its own terms. And Carolina Change had an enormous impact on me. I think that's the show that I've seen the most on Broadway. Like, I think I went back 3 times and saw that, and I loved it. It was right after I got out of college. So those are a few. There's probably more. My kid is yelling in the other room.
All right.
It's fine.
It's fine.
My
So I
husband's
think
there. It's fine.
yeah, I think we're moving on to our final question here, which is, what is the most important tip or piece of advice you can leave for people who want to engage more with the craft of playwriting or writing in general? Like what?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think time and boredom are two of the greatest assets that you have if you're thinking about writing. Being bored is really useful. And I think people underestimate it, because that's when I think you have time to sort of dream and have your imagination really go wild. And so I don't know what's happening out there. I don't have that here. There's no boredom here. But I do think it's incredibly useful for people to just take a little bit of time and actually just start writing. I would say that like right now is a great time to start a journaling practice. You've probably got a month in front of you where you're not going to be doing very much. And if you can give yourself honestly, put a timer on and write longhand for 10 minutes or God bless, a half an hour, every day, you'll start to unpack things that you've been feeling. I find it incredibly valuable. If I'm really stressed out, the first thing I do is I pull out a notebook and I start writing. And it creates a situation where I can, if I can name something, I feel like I can deal with it. And if I can't name something, I have a really hard time dealing with it, which is probably why I'm a writer. But I think that process of trying to name your feelings and trying to put them somewhere that is not inside you is incredibly valuable. And I think it can save a person's life. And so I think that is something that is really worth working on and allowing yourself to have access to, that, and meditation or breathing or yoga or something like that. I do both of those things every day, and both of those things help me. So on this very and I think that is the level that we're at right now. I don't know that anybody's ready to deal with trying to turn what we're experiencing into theater right now. But I do think that starting to collect your feelings about what you're experiencing is always valuable, but especially right now is always valuable. So I would start there. And then I think going beyond your own feelings and starting to think about other people, whether it's your relatives or your friends, or going outside of that and trying to imagine what it feels like to be a first responder dealing with this. I think that is A, it's empathy, and B, it's also the beginning of starting to try to make stories, because you're trying to connect the feelings that you're having with the experiences of others, and that creates a bigger tent, and it creates the beginning of starting to figure out how to tell a story. If you just want to if you want to start to write a play, you should put two people in a room who disagree with each other and see what you get. And for me, the first time I did that, I ended up with a full play. It just started me going, and I didn't stop. And it might just mean that you do a little exercise of it's a little self psychology lesson for yourself, where it's you and someone you have trouble with and you have trouble dealing with, and then you put them in scene together and you have them talk it out. But the line between your own therapy and the pieces that you're writing is often a little blurry. Sometimes you don't know which one you've made. So I think that allowing things to be connected to your own needs right now is a perfectly fine place to start from. And then you can let it grow and let it expand, and you make it bored with yourself, and then you'll start writing other things that are not about you, which is exciting too.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that advice. I think like you, the words you shared, the advice you shared here in this live stream, I think it's empowering to hear such great advice, and it's empowering to hear the stories of somebody who's been at it for a little while now. You've been you've been really working on your craft, and I think like all of the aspiring playwrights in our audience tonight feel really empowered by what you've shared. So I want to thank you for being here with us tonight, for taking
Thanks
time
for having me.
It's really early over there, and I mean, it's so great that you joined us here and shared advice, and it's great advice. Like the advice you shared here is great, actionable advice that I think our audience will be able to implement in their own journeys towards becoming writers, whether it's playwrights or even fictionists, poets, whatever they want to be. And so thank you for that. So yeah. So just before we end tonight's stream, I just want to plug one last time our beneficiary for this event, which is the UP Red Cross Youth's Paglingap project. So they're providing personal protective equipment for hospitals outside of Metro Manila. So we've posted details where you can send money. We've posted accounts where you can send money, and we hope that you do participate in supporting our frontline healthcare workers. And if you are able to donate, we hope that you will send 16 bars, a proof of donation, so that we can properly account for your donation. And I think Ria has a few words that she wants to say.
Yeah, someone messaged us and said that she donated for the UP Red Cross. Yes, thank you so much, Micah, for donating. And please, if you donated, please message us and send us your proof of deposit. So
yeah, proof of donation or proof of deposit.
Yes.
So that we can do proper accounting, and of course, so we can get back to you about how much we collected from everybody that donated. And then we can pull all that money together and send it to the UP Red Cross Youth for their project. So with that said, these final words, thank you to everybody who joined us in this short, this fleeting, but productive and instructive journey with somebody that we love. As theater people, we love the work that you're doing, Kait, and we're so glad that you're with us, sharing all of this with us. So thank you for being here.
Yeah,
all right.
Thanks for having me. It was really fun.
So with that, thank you to everybody who joined the stream. And of course, you can repeat the stream once. If you missed anything, you might want to go back and look at some of the, check out some more of the advice that Kait gave. So thank you everyone who was here. So bye.
Bye.
There's this building you pass on the subway to Queens. It's on the L or the R, or the one that's free. It's covered in tags, bright hieroglyphics. These 15-year-olds, they're so fucking prolific. I'm commuting, I'm eating my goddamn apple, and they're secretly painting their Sistine Chapel, but whatever. It's like they know